It's been 2 weeks since the world as I knew it came to an end. It all started with what they called a tanker incident off the coast. The news channels were flooded with images of it, and everyone assumed it was just another tragic oil spill. A wave of volunteerism swept the nation, people eager to help the poor, defenseless animals coated in black sludge. There were plenty of volunteers, and soon, plenty of victims. Within hours of the tanker breach, something went terribly wrong. The rescued animals became feral, viciously scratching and biting the cleanup crews. Experts on television theorized it was an adverse reaction to the unknown chemical in the tanker. Meanwhile, rescue workers were still attempting to breach the ship's hull to save the crew. They could hear frantic screaming from within, desperate pleas to cut the doors open. But that's when the situation spiraled into a nightmare. As soon as they cut through the final steel door, the live feed broadcast for 6 full minutes before it was abruptly cut. 6 minutes of pure, unfiltered agony. The ship's crew, with a horrifying, rabid energy, attacked the rescue workers. They moved like savage predators, breaking bones and tearing flesh. On the shore, things were no better. Those who had been bitten or scratched by the animals were now attacking everyone else. It was more brutal than any war zone footage I had ever seen, a scene of sheer, primal carnage. And yet, the networks broadcast it for 6 minutes before the screen went blank. A stunned silence fell over the news anchors. No one could explain what was happening. They tried to pivot, to return to regular programming, discussing the economy, the weather, some trivial human interest story, anything to distract from the horror. But they couldn't make us unsee what we had all witnessed. I attempted to go about my daily life, but every news broadcast, every newspaper stand, was a stark reminder of the unfolding mystery. They offered theories, some kind of new infection, a waterborne parasite, but it didn't matter. It wasn't an infection we were afraid of, it was them. Days after the initial report, a state of emergency was declared. It felt like we were living in every zombie movie ever made. Trust evaporated. People began hoarding food and weapons. Some tried to flee the cities, but just like in the movies, they rarely made it. 3 days later, they arrived in my town. I was expecting the classic movie monsters, moaning, shuffling corpses, slow and clumsy. That's where all the movies had lied. They didn't shamble. They sprinted through the streets, screaming with a terrifying rage. I remember scrambling to my front door, my heart pounding, locking and barricading it with every piece of heavy furniture I could move. I fortified it as best I could and then raced to the window on the 2nd floor. From there, I could see the carnage below. They were unstoppable. They were aware. I watched as a group of them charged a building across the street, launching themselves straight through plate glass windows. The shards slicing through their bodies made no difference. They just kept coming. My flimsy barricade wasn't going to hold. I rushed around my apartment, grabbing whatever supplies I could carry, bottled water, canned food, a flashlight, and jammed them into the most secure room in the house. I went back to the window for one last look, a decision I instantly regretted. In a second-story window directly across from mine, my eyes met one of theirs. It stared right at me. It knew where I was. Panic seized me. I dashed into my chosen sanctuary and locked the door. I don't have a panic room or a secure basement. The safest place I could think of was my bathroom. No windows, one solid door with a lock. I had already filled the sink and bathtub with water, hoping to wait it out. So I sat there in the pitch-black room with the distant screams echoing in my ears. After what felt like an eternity, I began to think I might have overreacted. It had been 2 hours with no sign of them. The screaming outside had subsided. I thought they had moved on. Maybe I could slip out, get more food from the kitchen, and truly fortify my position. A deafening crash from my front door shattered the silence. I then heard the sickening thud of a body running at full force into the door, splintering the wood and sending my barricade crashing to the floor. There were a couple more impacts, and then I knew. They were inside. Rapid, heavy footsteps pounded through my home. There were a few sharp screams and then a violent bang on the wall right beside me. My eyes were stretched wide in the absolute darkness. Another bang and then another. They knew I was in here. They knew I was terrified. This was the zombie nightmare I had always feared. I had nowhere to run. It was only a matter of time before they broke through the bathroom door. I pressed my back against it, hoping my weight would offer some small resistance. And then it got worse. "Why don't you open the door?" a voice said from the other side. Not a scream or a moan, just a quiet, raspy whisper. It was followed by more voices, a chorus of them. "We've come for you. You'll be happier if you open the door. It's not so bad out here." The whispery voices grew into a chilling cacophony, a symphony of persuasion designed to break my will, to fool me into surrendering. I had always heard that the constant moaning of zombies could drive a person insane, but this was infinitely worse. It was a siren's call, a psychological assault. I sat in the suffocating darkness, hoping and praying they would get bored and leave. But they don't get bored, and they don't leave. I managed to use my small shaving mirror to peek under the door. The sight that greeted me was of horrible, unblinking eyes staring back. Blood-smeared faces, contorted in silent screams, and accompanied by those horrible, endless whispers. That was 2 days ago. I don't know what to do anymore. I'm so tired. Maybe they're right. Maybe it won't be so bad.